Good afternoon, everybody, again. Look, I think this is going to be a very different session than what you've been going through for the last couple of days. Different because we're going to be pivoting a little bit outside of our familiar territory of GCCs and what we do in technology, etc. And then, look at a completely different industry, but having such a powerful application, if you may, for technology and what you could potentially get done, right? So, and we couldn't have found a better person to talk to than Prasad, and who's kindly agreed to be with us and share his thoughts around what he thinks of, why technology is so critical to what he does and what Dr. Reddy's do broadly in the marketplace, and some of the nuances that we just had a chance to catch up a little bit. So let me start with it. First of all, I want to again thank you, Prasad, for really accepting our invitation and being here. And it's a privilege for us. And then, so before we even get into the questions I have for you, I want to get your thoughts on, look, this hall is large, and then you have everybody in this room. They are part of the GCC ecosystem. Many leaders who fundamentally have done a phenomenal job of curating, building the GCCs, leading the GCCs, and growing at a much faster scale. So, and you are in Hyderabad. The GCCs transformed Hyderabad, right? And when you drive in the roads of Hyderabad, I can tell you 20 years ago and now, there's a huge difference that you see. So any thoughts before we get into our real conversation?
Okay. Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. I've always been inspired by the IT industry. I learned a lot from the leaders in the IT sector. Many things such as governance, scaling, working around the clock, thinking of pushing the limit and growth and all of that. So I'm honored to be here. We're a very small company compared to your sector. The sector itself is not so big as the IT sector, but I think it's a very important and emerging segment of the industry where India is globally competitive, at least in the generic and active ingredients part of the value chain. The point about Hyderabad and its growth, I also see a lot of pharma majors, the innovators of the world, coming to Hyderabad, setting up their GCCs here. And for me, it's not a great thing because they suck up the talent from our companies. And that's an push and pull that we have there. But it's wonderful to see so many companies like Novartis, Amgen, GSK coming in and setting up companies which have revenues of $50, $80 billion. So I think the ecosystem with the GCC is going to get better because we also get the opportunity to participate in this whole ecosystem.
Of course. No, I think that's wonderful. I think, as they say, rising tide lifts all boats, right? So I think the fact that there's so much of activity, especially in Hyderabad. I mean, you mentioned saying that these days when you come into Hyderabad, you almost it looks like Hong Kong. Is that what you said?
Yes, Hong Kong.
It looks Hong Kong. But having said that, you also talked about the importance of technology in pharma, medtech, and how you use this in both synthesis as well as the usage of technology in other parts of your drug discovery and all of that. So give us a sense of how much of technology that you use in Dr. Reddy's, which has made Reddy's what it is today. And of course, there's a lot of things have to come together to be successful at the end of the day. But I must argue, if you may, maybe technology plays a slightly bigger part than maybe some of the others. So what do you think of that, and do you agree with that?
So I think technology is a force multiplier. It is certainly something that every company has to use to remain competitive. But in our industry, I think the science has the primacy, the basic sciences, the engineering and all of that, and digital and AI and all that you guys do actually helps us become much more productive, effective, and also find things that would not have been possible without the application of these technologies. Just briefly to tell you, we are a generic company, primarily. So we have drug discovery as an activity today, but we don't have revenue from that. We have some small royalties and stuff like that. But our main business is generics. Generics, both drug substance, drug product. Substance is the actual chemical that you produce. Product is the tablet, capsule, or injectable, whatever you use on your body. So we use technology in developing processes, manufacturing, doing the tech transfer, all of those. And in recent past, in the last, say, 5 years, these technologies have really started making a big impact in terms of our productivity as well as efficiency. Take for example, a drug substance. A drug substance is an organic molecule usually, or a large molecule in terms of size if it's a biologic drug. But just for simplicity, let me address this small molecule part. An organic chemical which is complex but made from simpler chemicals. And there are n number of ways you can make it. It's a creative process of arriving at the most efficient route to get the lowest cost and the fastest time, also not infringe others' IP. So this is a very human-intensive IP process where people, talented chemists, have to use their mind and imagine the best route and also study literature, study patents, and do all that. This used to take a long time for scientists to do, and you really needed very good, talented scientists to analyze what has been done and come out with a very efficient way. Today, we can do all this with a program called Cynthia, or another product also, I don't remember the name, but these are AI-driven based on fundamental physics and chemistry, and also learning from all the history of work that you do. And they can go from the molecule back to the very basic stages and optimize the selection of the route based on the parameters that you want to achieve, whether it's the lowest cost, whether you want non-infringing IP, whether you want a green process, green chemistry, all of that, or applying all of that. And you can replace a lot of the innovative thinking that humans used to be doing through this. This is one example. For the drug product, again, there are many examples. Studying the literature, coming out with a suggested method to formulate the drug, and then doing virtual experiments, predicting the stability of the product. An enormous amount of work is possible now without doing the work. You can do all this
Simulation.
in Silico.
Yeah.
So simulation using AI, using generative AI as well as traditional AI, machine learning, computer vision. All of these are become part of our labs now. So in a sense, the full force of digital technologies merged with chemistry and the low cost of computing is really transforming how research is done in the industry.
So that's one end of it.
This is generics.
Yes.
But if you go to drug discovery, Rajan Anand was here before. Google had this AlphaFold,
Yes.
which has determined the structures of 90% of the proteins known to humanity. And using that information, you can now design drugs, again in silico, test them in silico also, and then actually go and do the experiments. So this has really accelerated drug discovery. And if you combine AI and robotics and automation with very high throughput experimentation, you can really, accelerate the whole journey of drug discovery many, many times.
So would you then also bring in a little bit of biology in the sense advancement of technology in understanding of a biology? Does it have an impact as well on what you do?
Absolutely, and AlphaFold is that.
Okay.
You know the structure of a protein. A protein is a very complex molecule, and it's not stationary. It keeps changing, keeps folding. And to do all that modeling and simulation today, it's impossible without the computational power we have. So using modeling, using the NVIDIA kind of computational power, GPUs, and fundamentals, physics and math, you are able to do a lot more in biology than was possible. And I think This is a whole new world out there. And the whole understanding of the human body, the proteins, the role of that they have in disease as well as in cures has improved and increased tremendously because of the computational power we have today.
Absolutely. No, one related topic which I thought, which is very topical in some sense, is and some of the folks we were catching up, uh, the whole GLP-1 and and the impact of what the Mounjaro and the Mozambique and the likes of that has had on people's lives, for example, at least globally, and the big pharma companies like Eli Lilly, the ability for them to come to India and then release an Indian version at a potentially a lower price point or an Indian price point, etc., is sort of revolutionizing the way people look at some of this. And I know you might have a different view, but how far are we from creating a generic? And do you think Dr. Reddy's will be interested in it? And do you also have some broad suggestion for the people out here who are looking at GLP-1?
So I'm not a doctor and I hate to give medical advice, but this product has really transformed a field, the field of diabetes and obesity. Till recently, there was no cure for obesity other than diets, exercise, and people were always blaming the obese person for not having enough willpower, and we all suffer from that kind of thing. And if you have a high BMI and your BMI is north of 30, this is a good product. The risks of being obese outweigh the risks of the product. And that is why it has been approved. And of course, people are misusing it. People want to look good and become thin. Models are using them and all of that. That I don't support. But for clinically obese people, this is a fantastic drug. We already make the product for testing.
Okay.
We have not launched it yet because it's under patent. We are registering the product all over the world, including India. And generic versions will start rolling out as soon as the patents expire.
And which is about a year, is that right? Patents expire?
In some countries, I think the first countries opening out would be Canada, Brazil. India is a little later than Canada, but 26, 27 should see launches of at least the first few generic versions of GLP-1s.
Excellent, excellent. Now, talking about generics, and I think one other related topic would also be that the big pharma always had a huge score to settle, if you may, with the generic companies such as Dr. Reddy's. While you've really been very innovative in your own way in terms of getting to where you are in terms of the generics, but the big pharma always said that they spend disproportionate amount of money on R&D, disproportionate amount of money on doing all the research and drug discovery and then finding the drugs, and then it becomes easier for the generics companies around the world to do what you do. And I know that's not fully the truth. And would love to hear from you what your experience has been and what the real truth there is.
See, no company can have monopoly rights forever. Patents expire and allow others to enter, and that's how prices come down. If we didn't have the generic companies, you would have innovators pricing their products very high forever. That's not a situation which can last. So at some point, intellectual property rights expire, then you have competition come in. Sometimes the intellectual property is weak. Generic companies try to attack that weakness and get in early and make a lot of money. So this is the way the world of commerce works. Of course, innovators are required because they advance medicine. They make better drugs, drugs which solve real problems of disease. And without an innovator company, there is no generic company. And a generic company needs an innovation molecule to copy. And if there was no generic company and innovation lasts forever, why would they change? Why would they improve? Why would they drive innovation? So it's like the yin and yang. You need generic companies to challenge the patents and overcome them, or launch generic versions after the patent rights expire. And you need innovators to find and discover new drugs to solve medicines or make them better. So it's a very nice way of driving innovation and driving affordability. And they're two different.
Sides of the same coin
Yeah,
in some sense.
yeah.
So you need both. You're saying that you need the generic companies to sort of drive some innovation as well.
Yes.
I want to go to the audience and see if they have any questions for you. So maybe you can get the mic ready. But I'm going to ask one more question. But by the time you get the mic ready, and then people who have questions, please put your hands up, and it'll come to you. You know,
So can I ask you a question also afterwards?
sure.
Yeah, okay.
No, this is the danger of going to the audience. So he wants to ask me a question, right? So which is a problem. But yes, let me finish this, and of course, we'll love to get your question as well.
Yeah.
With all the pricing pressure that you have,
Yeah.
you know, and you talk about regulations, and you deal with so many regulations. Every
Yeah.
market you serve,
Yeah.
they're highly regulated, and they want you to sort of jump through the hoops before you could do anything with generics in those markets. So how do you make sure that you stay competitive and then stay, relevant in those markets that you serve?
So every country has a regulator to protect the health of their citizens, and that's given. And there are varying levels of rigor of implementation and all that. But the broad law is the same everywhere. Do no harm. Keep your patients safe. Find drugs which will improve their health and don't harm them. That is the basis of regulation, apart from the IP part and all that. That's common for everybody else. So we are used to that. We are used to do safety studies. We are used to do post-marketing surveillance. The whole systems evolve to address the regulation, just like the aviation industry understands regulation, the banking industry. So we have our own regulations. And it's part of our processes. And, a lot of the GCCs manage the regulatory work from India. So
Right.
there's a lot of expertise in India for regulatory management also.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. You can certainly ask your question, but can we?
So Dr. Krishnan Rajagopalan is an ex-cancer researcher. I help pharma companies and startup companies to go into market. So I help pharma companies and biotech, startup companies get funding and go into the market. But I'm an ex-Harvard researcher, cancer researcher. The question is, see, with a lot of generic companies in India and China, other places, they follow the established products and then focus on the generic market. But the biggest thought process was, as the AI and generative AI and all the technologies come in, and as you mentioned today, that these are being applied in the lab and other places. And obviously, there are more clinical trials are being used with AI, and you have all the digital clinical trials coming in, patients not going to the hospitals, etc. If you combine that R&D within India with the application of this AI and Gen AI and other technologies, how long will it take for actually the generic companies become actually a product company?
Good question. And all of us have this dream of doing that at one point. But it's a very different game. The generics business is about making low-cost medicines of already known medicines, generic versions of them, and selling them all over the world through scale and efficiency. Innovation is about combining many disciplines: biology, chemistry, medicine, health, technology, using technology, all of that, and developing a novel product which actually improves the health or a disease condition. The cost of all this is north of $1 billion at the lowest, even in India with Indian costs. And generics are $2 million, $3 million a pop. So in generics, you take a large number of small bets. In innovation, you take small number of very large bets. It's a very different industry. So we manage it, but we manage it very differently. We have a drug discovery business also, but it's not a business yet. It's still R&D activity. Generative AI, all these things are tools which will help, but you still have to do the clinical development. And the major bottleneck is clinical development. It is not drug discovery. Drug discovery is probably 10 to 20% of the total cost of developing a new product. 80% is the clinical development. And clinical development has not changed much. You have digital tools to monitor, to understand parameters, to do data management, all that. But the actual act of dosing patients, testing them, all that hasn't changed. So only when, I think we have technologies which can cut the development cycle, then we will see dramatic shift in productivity of innovation. Having said that, I think several Indian companies are trying hard to bring innovative products. We have a pipeline of about 7 or 8 products in the clinic today being tested for cancers, various kind of cancers. We focused on oncology as a disease area. And there are other companies which are doing similar stuff.
China actually is experimenting in the biotech space with a model that I don't think I need to tell you, where they are coming up with molecules at fractional cost, and this is original product development. I don't think this is generics by any stretch of imagination. They're having this combination of academic institutes plus startups, and I won't run deep into that model, which is working splendidly well. And you have all of these Western companies now putting tons of money there because they know they will not be able to do it at the cost. What is working there that is not working here, because of which we are not able to do this correctly? I mean, model head-to-head replicated between the two countries.
Yeah, again, very good question. The Chinese have been very good at this, and they've been following this for the last 10 to 20 years. They've been investing in biotech. I don't think they're doing fundamentally new innovation, though. They are doing a fast follower act, but they're doing it at such speed that it's very hard to replicate. And they're doing both biosimilars, biologics, small molecules, and they're running it at a very high pace. It's not that they're spending less money. They have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in building those capabilities. They also have a lot of scientists returning, the sea turtles, like what they call them, well-trained. Yeah. If you meet the top management team of a Chinese biotech, they'll be as good as any US company. And today, I think they're number 2 in innovation. US is still number 1, but they're number 2 and they're catching up very fast. They've also, huge amount of money they've invested in innovation. So they've also created a market. You ask me what's different in China versus India. If you have an innovative product in China, you have high price protection, you have a protected market, and you have reimbursement for the innovative products. This is a lot of money. We don't have that in India. So the moment you price it a little high here, there's a lot of hullabaloo, and we don't get reimbursement. There's no theory of reimbursement at all in India. There's insurance, but they won't reimburse any expensive drugs. So the system still has to evolve. The ecosystem is not there for high-priced, innovative products in India yet. But having said that, I think the current government is putting a lot of emphasis. Of course, they are saying 100 NCEs by 2037 or something. But we hope that some action will follow.
Thank you. Any other? Yeah.
So I have a question I want to ask.
Ahead, yeah.
So the IT industry is highly profitable. You see the wealth created. I mean, so many billionaires, so much of profits. Your quarterly results make me dizzy. But I don't see a lot of investment in original research. When are you going to have a deep-seek moment in India? When will you do something?
I knew this. Now you know why I was not letting him ask the question.
Yeah, I know your profits are fantastic. No, shareholders are very happy. Your quarterly profits are just, No,
I think you have a very, very fair
why can't you just invest 10% of your profits or 20% of your profits and figure out something which will make India great again or whatever?
I think we are great. We are great in a different way. But your point is very valid. I don't think you saw any breakthrough innovation from the industry as yet. But having said that, I think
the digital public infrastructure is something we should be proud about.
Definitely. So you do find those nuggets in not just in DPI, but across the board. You find that. Oh, by the way, as you know, eventually we talk about countries and industry and all that. The real competition or the innovation will happen within an organization. So you find that, and also the profit margin that you said, the ability for people to invest, etc., will rest within an organization. And then we are sort of a collection of all the organizations, which is great. But the amount of money today invested in R&D in this sector is not just in this sector, but in any sector.
In general,
The same reason why in pharma we do generic as opposed to drug discovery. The same reason why in IT broadly, we do more services, which is a little bit easier, if you may. But relatively speaking, I know the services company wouldn't agree with me compared to breakthrough products. I think there's the same set of reasoning, if you may. But I do completely agree with you that we had a session yesterday with talking about R&D and then R&D spend, both from the country as well as from our us. And the same reasoning that you gave, it requires a lot of investments and then into the R&D before you kind of start to making some really move the needle. And if you see, even though DeepSeek came out and said they only needed $5 million to do that, and of course, it is also a result of a long process of how they've been able to do that. And of course, we most certainly we should do that. What we are good at doing it, I mean, I think we are not good at doing maybe something what you mentioned, but what we are really good at doing as a country is ability for us to build on top of this. For instance, I believe that the foundational models such as DeepSeek will become commodity at some point in time. The ability for us to build something on top which will truly solve a business problem is probably we are very, very good at doing it. And then this could actually leverage probably multiple models.
I have a theory, I don't know if you'll agree with me. We as a country are very good at solving a problem which is well defined. But we don't have the imagination to see what's next and put our money there or put our effort there. And I see this in my labs also. That's why generics, we are kings.
Exactly.
But innovation, we are still struggling, right?
Yeah.
So even our PhD system, I don't know if it encourages people to think out of the box, imagine a new way of doing
paradigm,
things,
a new problem.
thing.
Yeah,
But if you nicely define the problem, we are fantastic at solving them.
Yeah.
That is our strength.
Maybe a different makeup in some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. You have a question.
Hi, Mr. Prasad. I have a question for you. So I've previously been an entrepreneur. Now I build tech teams for global tech companies. But in that previous entrepreneurship, I gained some interest towards medical sciences and drug discovery. Specifically, I was running a hemp company, and then we understood that CBDs and the hemp oils have been something that has been truly magical. I wanted to get your take on this as well. For drug discovery yourself, have you been looking at new frontiers of drug discovery to bring in India and possibly challenge problems like cancer today?
So we have a 100% owned subsidiary based in Bangalore, which does research, deep research in oncology. We also collaborate globally to bring medicines discovered elsewhere here. We are doing cell and gene therapies also. So it's right now not a significant part of our revenue, but we hope it will be. And we hope that we will solve some cancers for Indians.
So let me then ask you the last question that I had. So, we talked about China and we talked about competing with China for especially in the generic market, etc.
I just want to correct you. Sure. China is not a big player in generics. Indians are the big players.
Correct.
Chinese are good in innovation.
Right.
And they've taken giant strides there and they're far ahead of us.
Yes, in the drug discovery. I'm saying, but they also make generics to some extent, at least for the domestic market.
But it's not a big component of their revenue.
Correct. So the question here was more saying, how do you, and we talked about, even though in the COVID pandemic, India was very well known for making all the vaccines, we must remind ourselves that we really didn't invent the vaccine, we manufactured the vaccine, right? Yeah. So you see India's future in pharma is more about the fact that, again, the same topic that we were talking about, doing more of what is well defined and then manufacturing the vaccine as opposed to creating the vaccine. Similarly, generic versus drug discovery. So where do you see this moving along? When you look at
we have to invest in innovation. As a country, we have to invest in innovation. We have to have deep science in our universities, academic institutions, and we do have some great institutions. The IITs are doing a wonderful job. Institute of Science, University of Hyderabad, many good places. But I think we have to become more outcome-oriented. And we have to invest in basic sciences, like the Chinese have done. We have to create maybe 100 universities which are very deep, in science and technology. And then we have to create the ecosystem of funding innovation. We have to take risks not always look at the PE multiple, but really look at the value of the intellectual property you're generating and have a system of valuing companies for the innovation they have, not just for the profits they make. And then you need to have a supportive market system, a local market. Creating innovation without a local market is very tough. The Chinese recognize this, and they created a very strong domestic market for their innovators. So we have to create a domestic market, we have to create the deep science required, and we have to put risk capital into the system. And with all this, I think we'll flourish. No country can become great on just doing the low-end stuff. We have to go up the value chain.
Prasad, we have so many other questions, but I know our time is up. But really, thank you for being very candid, and I think your insights on the impact of technology is also phenomenal. So let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.